And now it's my honor to welcome Senator Bob Corker to the podium to introduce our guest speaker today, and I thank him so much for his willingness to be part of our program as well.
Well, it's a great pleasure for me to be here, and while it's a privilege to represent you in the way that I do, and it takes me to countries far-flung, I've spent the August recess like I normally do, traveling our state, and I've been to 32 counties this month. It's been by far the most enjoyable recess period I've ever experienced. It's been so great to be across this wonderful state, but there's nothing like being home in my hometown. So it is great to be with all of you today. I thank Bill for this wonderful opportunity. And speaking of my hometown, I do want to thank Mayor Coppinger and Mayor Burke for their leadership and continuing to make sure that this city and county's best days lie ahead, and for the way that they work with each other. I want to thank Bill Kilbride for his outstanding leadership of this chamber, someone who had retired but is giving his best years and wisdom again to make sure that our best days lie in front of us. And to Roy and Mike for leading us the way the other 14 who are here with us have done, in such a great tradition of making sure that as we focus on all the great needs of our community, we put up top making sure that heads of households have great paying jobs. So thank you so much. It is easy for me to make this introduction. I do so with great warmth and pride. Bill Haslam, as you know, is one of the greatest governors in our country. I think you know that under his leadership, we have the fastest improving educational standards in the country. Under his leadership, we have over 330,000 jobs that have been created. Under his leadership, we've continued the tremendous tradition of having a balanced budget every year, working with outstanding General Assembly members. Under his leadership, we continue to be one of the best managed states in the country. Under his leadership, we have a AAA rating for one of the first times in modern history. We have no infrastructure debt in our state. And I think you know, especially working so closely with our city, we have the #1 growth in advanced manufacturing in our state of any state in the country. An incredible record of achievement. I think you also know, and we have Volkswagen and Wacker and others who are here to join us, we are leading the country in foreign direct investment. And one of the stats that is really plaguing our nation right now is the fact that our labor force participation has been down around the country, and it's affecting us in many ways, and all of us know what a challenge that is. Yet in the state of Tennessee, our labor force participation is rising. We have more people in Tennessee working today than at any time in our state's history. On a personal note, I've known Governor Haslam for a long time. I met him when he was 14 or 15 and I was 19 or 20. His brother was my roommate in college, and we would gather at his home often to talk about the future, all of which was focused on business. Later in life, I had the good fortune of them encourage me along my way as I began to think about public service, and I will be forever indebted to them for that encouragement. I believe that public service is an honorable profession. I do. And I believe that as public officials, we can certainly create the environment to enhance people's lives and to really change the way that they feel about the future. So it's with a degree of personal pride that I am able to say that I feel like along the way I was able to encourage him in a small way as he began to think about public service. And I say that not to focus on me. I say that because of all the people's lives he has affected in a positive way, will continue to affect in a positive way. Please welcome to the podium the governor of the great state of Tennessee.
Thank you. That was very nice. Thank you. A little overdone, but thank you. Thanks, Bob. Thank you. Thanks. It is great to be here, and Bob, as Bob has said, we have been friends for a long time. As a matter of fact, he left out part of the story. I wouldn't be in public service if it wasn't for Bob Corker. I can still remember that. Actually, this is another fun fact. We sort of share a birthday. I think his is today or tomorrow. Mine was yesterday. He's a little bit older than me, and so I can remember when he first talked me into going into public service. At the time, he was the mayor of Chattanooga, and he came to my elementary school to visit my second grade class. No, he's not that much older. But seriously, Bob, when Bob was the mayor of Chattanooga, I started thinking about running for mayor of Knoxville, and without him, I wouldn't have done this. It is a huge honor to be here. I was looking at your previous speaker. So last year was Fred Smith. Arguably Tennessee's most acclaimed business person ever, and maybe one of our country's foremost business people, and I think one of the great thinkers in America, period, about how things work. And then the year prior to that was Senator Corker, hometown hero, former mayor, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations, known and making an impact all around the world. And so I was a little intimidated that I would walk around the corner and there would be like 83 people here. Or that everybody'd be saying, well, you should have come last year or the year before. It was really good. And then I walked in and saw, man, this is a great crowd. I get to do this all over the state. And let me just hats off to the Chattanooga Area Chamber. This is impressive, the work you do and the people are reflected here. Like I said, I get to see this all around the state. And this is really, really impressive. But it also made me start wondering, like, well, I wonder if everybody, like, did they know I was coming or did they think it was somebody else? Because about 2 months ago, I don't travel like Senator Corker does. About 2 months ago, we were in Asia recruiting business for Tennessee, and we had been in Korea, and we were going to China, and we flew from Seoul, Korea to Hangzhou, China, and we landed. And you know, when you're governor, I'll admit, inside the country, you get a lot of special treatment. So if I fly to Dallas, that, you know, there'll be a Texas state trooper that'll meet you and pick you up, and, you know, you're whisked to a car and taken away. But overseas, you don't get anything special. And so, which, you know, I don't know who I talked to about that, but anyway, we land, and as we land and we're a little bit late, and we land, and we're supposed to go have this recruitment meeting with this company, and so we're grabbing our stuff out of the overhead bins, and my wife Chrissy is with me, and Randy Boyd, who's our Commissioner of Economic Development. And so it's one of those old external exit planes where you walk, you know, you go down the steps to the tarmac, and as I look out the window, there's a band, and there's all these soldiers at attention, and there's these women holding these huge bouquet of flowers. My wife later told me it was more than the combined total of flowers I'd given her in our whole marriage. But we walk down there, and as soon as I'm thinking, I wonder what this is about. And as soon as we walk out, the band starts playing, and these soldiers come to attention, and they're saluting, and this limousine pulls around, and, you know, the mayor's shaking our hand, and they give Chrissy this huge bouquet of flowers, and all of a sudden we're in the limo, and we're taking off, and we're moving. I look to the guy that's kind of our host, and I go, that was really nice, but what was all that about? He goes, well, do you want an honest answer? I said, yeah. And he said, well, the G8 summit is meeting here in 2 months. And President Obama's coming, and we were practicing on you. So I was just a little worried. That, like, y'all were practicing on me, and, like, the real speaker's going to come here in a minute and say, see ya. Let me, a couple things. I do have a world of respect for Fred Smith, and he talked last year, and he said something that I bet was a little provocative, and then matched up with some recent news, probably is even more so. And Fred made a statement to the effect of that the education system in our country is not preparing the workforce for the future, period. I might not have had that exactly right, but Fred said something pretty strong like that. And if you know Fred, that doesn't surprise you to make a definitive statement, because he really believes that and thinks that. And then I know A couple weeks ago, the Sunday Above the Fold, large headline in the Chattanooga Times Free Press was about the percentage of teachers in Hamilton County who are evaluated as below effective, and the higher percentage than other areas. And so it's appropriate that I hear everybody in this chamber talking about workforce development. And I want to come back and talk about that issue. I want to talk about education and what we're doing and what we can do about it, because it is in everything that Fred said I agree with, and obviously the numbers are what the numbers are in terms of what the paper reported. But I want to maybe put that in context and then say, well, what do we do about it? What do we do about this? Before I do that, I'm going to give a quick little kind of update on the state. Actually, Bob's talk did that. I felt like when Bob got up here and said all that, I should have just said, I'm Bill Haslam, I approve that message, and you all have a good day. But a quick summary. There's some really good things happening in Tennessee, and Bob talked about a lot of those economically. I do want to talk about a few of those because Chattanooga plays a big role. We were rated the #1 state for advanced manufacturing in the country. And there's no doubt that a lot of what's happening here in southeast Tennessee is responsible for that. But that's a pretty big deal for Tennessee to be there. 10 years ago, nobody would have said we would be that. And when Brookings Institute comes out and says that, that's a big deal. I won't say who, but several folks in this room were with me yesterday as we were recruiting another company to hopefully come to southeast Tennessee. It says something when you can have an outside group kind of validate what we've been saying, that this really is the best place to do business. So when you're in the #1 state for that, that's a big deal. We're also the #1 state for foreign direct investment. Again, obviously, southeast Tennessee has played a big role in that. Our friends at Volkswagen, and got to just see Christian and his team 3 weeks ago, and then a month or two before that, Wacker, Gestamp. I can keep going. So big part in what's happening there. So there really is there really are some big successes, and maybe one of the biggest is this. In the last year, Tennessee's unemployment rate has dropped faster than any other states. We've basically in 1 year gone from 5.7 to 4.1% unemployment. So a lot of good work being done. And by the way, let me say this. The governor, people go, oh gosh, well, you're governor, unemployment went down. Well, being governor is a little bit like being quarterback of the football team. You get way more credit for the good stuff and way more blame for the bad stuff. The real thing is there are a lot of people like you and others in this room who are going out and selling their communities, and we're coming along and helping. So that's wonderful. The state's financial condition is in good shape. There's been a lot of controversy lately about the fact that the state has an $800 million surplus. I always thought that was a good thing. And all these people are talking about, gosh, you have a surplus, what are you going to do, et cetera. Well, you first should ask, well, how do we get that? And we've worked really hard. The members of the General Assembly, and I wish I had a list of who all is here. I know that Senator Watson is here, Senator Gardenhire, Leader McCormick, Mark Gravitt is here, Patsy Hazelwood. Did I miss anybody else? If I did, I apologize. But they've worked really hard. So we've actually taken $550 million in ongoing expenses out of state government, and that is not easy. As my predecessor, Governor Bredesen, used to always say, everybody wants you to run government like a business until you do, and then they decide they don't like it quite so much. But that's been hard work, so that's one way we have. The second way is the state's economy is doing really well. We basically forecast the revenue into the state in terms of sales tax revenue, what you pay when you go to the store, and then businesses, franchise and excise tax, and we were 2 or 3 points higher on each of those than we thought we'd be in terms of percentage increase. And so the net effect is we're in a really good financial position. We were in that last year too, by the way, and so we were able to do things that we thought mattered. We put the largest increase into public education in the state's history without a tax increase, including over $100 million just to teacher salaries. We invested in our employee salaries in state government because I don't want state government to be a place where people go because it has great long-term benefits, but you don't get paid what you should short-term. But we also challenge people, and we put in a performance pay system in government. One of the first times it's ever happening, and it's actually working, and our employees are saying, I like this. I like the idea that the people who perform the best for our customers, that they get rewarded and acknowledged. And we made record investments in the capital structure of the state, higher education, taking care of our own buildings and doing things like that. And we want to do the same thing again next year. So the key to all that is keeping business growing. And if we do that, then the state's revenues will be in a position where we can do so many other things that we'd like to. The state has a AAA rating from the credit agencies for really only the second time in our state's history, and that's obviously important for us as well. The third area is the whole education front. And again, you all have taken, I don't know if you know all this about yourself, but you've taken the lead as well. Our Tennessee Promise, the program for 2 years free of community college or technical school for anybody that graduates from high school, the first in its kind has been remarkably successful. The best way you can know if a student's thinking seriously, a high school student, about going to college is if they fill out the FAFSA, the financial aid form. And some of you have had to do that, and you're nodding your head about how horrible it is. And thanks to Senator Corker and Senator Alexander, we're trying to shrink that. Last year in Tennessee, 71% of our students filled out a FAFSA form, okay? The next highest state was New Jersey at 60%. So it shows how we're changing the mindset of people that think, I really can go to college. And we're doing things to make it when they get there that they're prepared. There was a program pioneered right out of Chattanooga State called SAILS that took the remedial work people used to do in community college and moved it back into high school so they'd be prepared when they got there and they didn't lose heart and drop out. So really good things are happening, and as Bob said, we're still the fastest improving state in the country for education results over the last 4 years. So a lot to be encouraged about. But I want to come back to what Fred Smith said and what the Chattanooga Times Free Press reported. It's not usually my habit to give media free advertising, so, but I did think it's important story, okay, and to say, if all that's true, well then what do we do about it? We're making great progress in Tennessee, but what do we do about it? Let me just start with this. It is a really hard problem, okay? I love that the Chamber is taking this on. I love Chattanooga 2.0. It will make a difference. But know this up front. It is really hard. In this presidential election, and this is a Chamber event, so I won't get political. I'll criticize both sides, okay? In all the debates that have happened on the Republican side and the Democrat side, and I don't know what the total is. I think it's 25 or plus, I bet, if you add both of them up. I bet there has been a minute and a half of conversation about education, despite the fact that it's our biggest national challenge. The nominee on my party has said one thing about education. He has said, we need to do away with Common Core. Well, that's the idea that and he said, we got to remove federal intervention from our local school systems. Well, last year, Senator Alexander led the effort to pass the SSA, which now makes it against the law for the feds to intervene in our local school system. That's a bogeyman that's gone. There's no such thing as Common Core to worry about anymore, okay? And so that's the conversation on my side. Out of the other side, Senator Clinton has really backed up on, I think, maybe one of the boldest things that President Obama has done. President Obama took a huge risk, and like I said, we disagree about a lot of things, but he took a huge risk on one thing. He went against his parties, one of its biggest backers, traditionally the unions, and particularly the teachers union, and said, I think we need to make certain that every teacher gets an evaluation, and we're going to tie that evaluation to the students' assessments, the end-of-the-year tests that we take every year to measure how much progress a student has made 1 year over the next. It's what the newspaper article is referring to in terms of how much progress a student has made. Obama made a huge political risk in stepping out and saying, I'm going to fight to make certain that the evaluations are tied to the assessments. Senator Clinton has basically said, I don't believe that. Matter of fact, I'm not even sure I believe in this whole idea of end-of-the-year assessments. That is a huge backward step. So you have both national parties really not focusing on what one of the key issues is. And for us in Tennessee, we're the fastest improving state in the country, I think for a lot of reasons, but one of the most basic is this. We said that we are going to use those student assessments to evaluate teachers. Now, there's a million problems with that. We're doing too much testing. It's not, there's too many variables to use that for the teachers. I understand all that. In Tennessee, we're doing something about that. We're cutting the amount of testing by 30% in our schools this coming year. But the answer is not to disassociate how we evaluate teachers from what sort of progress students make. If we do that, we will continue to see these huge gaps between minority students and non-minority students. If we do that, we won't be aware of where we're falling short. And so it's hard because the national conversation is easy to wander off. It's hard for another reason. If we all divided up and said, I'm going to take all 1,300 people in here. We're going to divide up in groups of 10 and go visit schools, and we're going to come back tomorrow at lunch and report and tell me what you learned. I am really confident of one thing. Everybody would come back and say, wow, that's a lot harder than I thought it was. That those teachers are dealing with way more social issues that walk in the front door with that student every day than I ever dreamed. It's not like when I went to school. And in the front door where that student walks, family issues and economic challenges and so many other things. And so if you would come back, you would say, whoa, I see why it's so hard. Teachers barely have time to teach what they have to while they're dealing with all the challenges of today's society. And so we could look at those challenges and others and say, this is really hard. But I heard a story that I think sums up what our attitude needs to be. I had the privilege of going to Pat Summitt's funeral. Pat was from a little town called Henrietta. It's in just in Montgomery County, Dixon County, just kind of northwest of Nashville, little tiny town. And they later had a big celebration at UT. But the funeral was in this little country church that was her family's church, and about 120 people. And Michelle Marciniak got up and spoke. Those of you who are Lady Vol basketball fans will remember Michelle. She was a long blonde-haired point guard. Her picture was on the cover of Sports Illustrated when they won the national championship. She was the person Pat was recruiting when Pat went into labor and made the famous statement, I'll be danged if I'm not having this baby in Tennessee. Let's go home. And so despite being in labor with Pat's indomitable will, flew home, okay? But Michelle gets up at the funeral and told a story. She said, I had no idea what a big deal it was to be a Lady Vol. I didn't know what all came with this and all the public attention. And when she got there, she was a highly acclaimed recruit. And she said to Pat, she said, I'll play, I'll do everything you want, but don't make me go speak at all this community stuff. I have a stuttering problem. I'd rather shoot a free throw for the national championship in front of however many people. I'll do that every day, but don't make me go speak in front of people. And Pat's words, if you know Pat, were what only Pat could say. She said, toughen up, Buttercup. And so every chance from then on that there was a speaking opportunity, Pat gave Michelle the chance to go speak. And 3 years later, when they won the national championship and they get invited to the White House, it's Michelle that speaks for the team. And then however many years later, when Pat dies, it's Michelle that gives a eulogy at Pat's funeral. So the fact that it's hard is not an excuse for us to back up. Well, what do? I think we do several things. The first thing is we realize that we are all in this together. At the state, we don't want to be pointing fingers at Elliott, at the local education authorities, and we hope you're not pointing fingers at us. We really want to be in this together. I know your local state delegation is interested in having a public dialogue about this soon, and I hope you'll be a part of that as well. Secondly, talent pipeline is everything. In your business, you focus constantly on the people coming into your business. The talent pipeline is the same thing, and it's the same thing in education. We have to start focusing on that in our education system to make certain that the very best people are attracted and want to stay teaching. The next thing is, it's like everything else, leadership matters. And the whole process of training a leader, I think, has been undervalued. You know, I have a friend who has a statement about his business that says this, said, everybody wins when a leader gets better. And that same thing is true with our principals and our administrators and our teachers. The teacher prep programs at places like UT Chattanooga are really important. And from the state standpoint, we're going to do everything we can to help those be great programs, and we hope you'll be tied into those as well. But making certain that that talent pipeline, the teacher prep programs, and then once teachers get there, that they have real professional development, not just the kind of stuff where you can check off the box of being there for a certain amount of hours. And finally, it's this. At the end of the day, nothing makes a school as great as a community that cares. We have a big political discussion going on in this country right now, right? We've never been more divided. And this election, no matter who wins, that new presidential nominee, the person who wins on November 9th, that morning they're going to wake up as the most unpopular newly elected president ever. And That's just right. I mean, you look at the favorability, unfavorability ratings and look at how the country is split, that's the reality. And yet the challenges are greater than ever. And it's the same thing in education. The issues are hard. They're really hard. And they split along political lines and everything else. But what we need are people who say, at the end of the day, we can argue forever about whose fault it is. But we need people who own it, who say as a community, we're going to own this. And we're going to invest in our schools, both for compensation, but we're going to invest as a community in letting people know that they care. There's nothing greater at stake for our state than that. Let me just wrap up with this. When I was elected, I got a text from Lamar Alexander, who would know because he had been governor, that said, being governor of your home state is one of the best jobs in the world, unless your home state is Tennessee, unless it is the best. In that case, it is the best job in the world. And I feel that way about this job. I really do. And I feel incredible about our potential and the things that are happening, not just here in Chattanooga, but all across the state, as Senator Corker said. But we have to be serious about saying that we're not going to accept excuses when it comes to making certain that people have equal opportunity. Last thing I'll say is this. The big debate in this country, and it's a fair one, is about income inequality. And you cannot deny that. I don't care where you are in the political spectrum, it is real. Okay? The question is, what are we going to do about it? Some people say, well, we can just, we can tax our way out of income inequality, but I can tell you this, the math won't work doing that. The only thing that I would think works is giving people a different level of opportunity. And we will never fix our our poverty issues, I think, until we fully address our education issues. It's why I focused more on this as governor than anything else. And it's why I've got I have somebody in our office who reminds me I've got 859 more days. It's why I'll spend every one of those 859 days making certain that our students have that opportunity to compete with anybody, regardless of their zip code or regardless of anything else about their background. So thank you all. Thanks for being the kind of people who care enough to come to lunch. Thank you to the Chattanooga Chamber for playing a leading role in this. We want to be your partner, and if we'll focus on this, there is nobody in the whole world that can compete with Tennessee. Thanks so much.